Part of housekeeping. This meeting webinar will be being recorded. Thank you for joining. Pleased to say that we are hosting this webinar. It's being sponsored by Radformation and is designed to give you an overview of their Q&A and QC platform. We are joined by Patrice, who is the Western and Northern Europe account manager, and he's going to compare this webinar along with a couple of keynote speakers. There will be plenty of opportunity to ask questions, and you should have all had a notification that we are utilising Slido, which I think, James, next slide, please. Thank you. There is also a QR code on the screen for you now to utilise. Hopefully, it should be quite straightforward to be able to join on to that. We do ask, if you haven't already, make sure that your microphone is muted. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Patrice, who will take it from here.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and welcome everybody. We are really thrilled to have you this webinar. It promises to be a great one, and we have two great speakers. And so this webinar, obviously, we have two parts. We have the first part that will focus on the QC in diagnostic radiology, and then the second part on the therapeutic side of things. So our first speaker is Shona Burke, and Shona is a medical physicist working in diagnostic imaging and nuclear medicine at Mater University Hospital, which is a light teaching hospital in central Dublin. And she's also the editor of the Irish Association of Physicists in Medicine. And she completed her BSc and MSc in medical physics at the University of Galway, and has a particular interest in the intersection of computer programming and medical physics. And the second speaker that we have today is my colleague, Samantha Jackman, who is a clinical success manager at Radformation. A specialty is QA and QC on the product side, RadMachine in particular. And she's got 10 years experience in the field with a background in diagnostic radiology, radiation therapy, and medical physics. And she used her experience in clinical expertise to help a clinic streamline the workflow and processes. And so without further ado, I'm just going to hand over now to Shona, who's going to talk to us about using RadMachine for diagnostic QC. Shona, off to you.
Thanks so much, Patrice. Great introduction. Let me just try to share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that now. So, as Patrice said, my name is Shona Burke. I work as a diagnostic medical physicist at the Mater Misericordia University Hospital. And today I'm going to discuss our experience so far with using RadMachine for diagnostic QC. Now, before I begin, I do just want to make it clear that I have not received any funding from Radformation to do this talk, and there are no conflicts of interest. So I just want to begin with a bit of background about us and our workflow in the hospital. We're a large teaching hospital located just about here in Dublin city centre. We're a pretty busy radiology department with over 60 imaging systems carrying out about 200,000 scans per year. Until late last year, we used multiple different platforms to store and manage our data. We used a custom-built in-house software application that was called RadAsset for equipment management. This software was used by radiographers to log equipment issues or upcoming services. And then vendor service reports were held on various networked drives across the hospital. And our quality assurance was carried out using the old faithful Microsoft Excel. Now, we had already identified some problems with this setup, primarily issues with lack of automation and the doubling up of work, which were only becoming more glaring as our department continued to grow in size. But to be honest, the real impetus for changing our workflow actually came from our IT department in the hospital. So the equipment management software that we had in place, RadAsset, was custom designed, as I said, by a physicist who has since moved on from the hospital. The data was stored on a physical server in the hospital that was no longer being routinely backed up. So given the lack of ongoing maintenance to the website, as well as the lack of any server backup, IT identified the website as a cybersecurity risk for the hospital, and they asked us to find a new equipment management solution as soon as we could. So I was already aware of and very interested in QA Track Plus, which is an open source program for radiotherapy and diagnostic imaging clinics to manage their QA and their equipment. We were already looking at various equipment management software platforms, but honestly, QA Track seemed to be so many steps ahead of anything else. It was incredibly customizable. It allowed for the incorporation of Python coding and image analysis on the platform. It automated data trending. The list just kind of goes on. For us, the only issue with QA Track was the fact that it was going to require support from the IT team for install, as well as ongoing maintenance from an in-house physicist. We kind of wanted to avoid this as much as possible because of the potential for a sort of platform deterioration, which is what we had seen happen with RadAsset, our previous solution. So that was when we realized that RadMachine existed, a completely cloud-based, commercially supported product that was based on the principles of QA Track. It sort of felt like all of our prayers had been answered. So we got in contact with the RadMachine sales team, and we were honestly really impressed with how responsive their customer service was. They were willing to do multiple calls with us from the beginning to figure out whether the platform was even suitable for our needs. And they set us up as well with a fully functioning platform for a trial period so that we could give it a good go. So in December 2023, after trialing the software for a couple of months, we purchased a license for RadMachine. So we've now been working with it properly for almost 4 months. Since we knew that our previous equipment management solution was at the end of life stage, we got straight to work on transitioning to RadMachine and bringing all 3 of our primary aspects of QC onto one platform. Now, before I go on, in order for this change in software to be embraced, it is really important that the software does what its users need it to do. And our software has a lot of different users with a lot of different needs. So while we transition over to RadMachine, we have been holding a lot of meetings with key stakeholders. So the radiography service manager, the radiation safety officer of the hospital, and the manager of the radiology directorate. Everyone needs to be kept in the loop, and they need to get the chance to give feedback about what features are most important for them. So let's start with our experience of equipment management with RadMachine. So when we began working on RadMachine initially, we created a spreadsheet in Excel of our equipment, and we cross-checked all the serial numbers and installation dates with the manufacturer's records to make sure that they were correct. Sam was our primary contact at RadMachine, and she was able to take the Excel spreadsheet that we created and bulk import all the equipment details. So this slide here just shows how the overview of some of our units appears on RadMachine. And then when you click into the details section for a unit, you can see everything about it. So from the unit class to the serial number, and then down here is the section for unit attributes. This is where you can add details like system IDs, asset numbers, and you can even add like reference photographs to this section if you want. Now, most equipment management software platforms are probably going to have similar interfaces to this one. But what I think sets RadMachine apart in a way is how equipment management and quality assurance really go hand in hand. So for example, I was just talking about the unit attribute details. And then when I go to perform QA on that system, I can see the unit attributes right here. And obviously this type of detail is really convenient on a practical level for identification purposes of the equipment. But from a regulatory standpoint for us, these small details really help to reduce human error at every step. Now, before I go fully into the quality assurance side of RadMachine, I want to take a quick look at the homepage. So this is a screenshot from my RadMachine homepage. Each piece of equipment has its own self-contained section, which shows any service events that are active on the equipment. as well as any QA that needs to be reviewed. Now, this homepage looks different for everyone depending on the QA that they have assigned to them. So you can see that my login has a lot of different units and it can look a little bit complicated, but the appearance of this page can actually be made really user-friendly for busy clinical staff on the floor. So as an example, here's what our mammography radiographers would see when they log into the platform. So it's just the 3 units that are relevant to them. Now, once we had set up all of our equipment on the platform initially, we began building our QA protocols. This was probably the most daunting task, but we did have a lot of assistance from Sam at the beginning to get over the initial stumbling blocks. So I'm going to start by showing you one of our simpler QA test lists that we've built and then go on to the more complex physics QA. So we'll start with one of the quarterly QA protocols that we've built for one of our mobile fluoroscopy C-arms. This QA is completed by the radiation safety officer at our hospital. So this is the homepage. From the homepage, you can click into the unit and you're brought to this page, which is the test list view for the unit. So once again, as I said before, the way that this page looks will depend on your role. So a radiographer is only going to see QA assigned to radiographers and so on. Now this page serves as an overview of everything important. So due dates, pass-fail stages of the previous QA, whether it was reviewed. Because the radiographer QA is more routine, it was possible for us to keep it all contained in one nice, simple test list. So when a radiographer wants to perform this QA, they just click into the test list and all the tests will appear. So at the top of the page, you'll see there are some preset constant values. And then as you keep going down, there's space to begin filling in your measurements. Now, each of these lines here is a test, which is just like a cell in Excel, but unlike Excel, you can actually see the past measurements that you took for easy comparison. And then if you want to see them charted, you just click on this little blue chart icon, and it generates a plot of all of your past measurements and the tolerances that you set on them. Honestly, this automated trending is easily one of our favorite features about RadMachine. It has saved us so much time already, and it's proven really useful even at these initial stages for doing quick checks of KV and dose trends on different pieces of equipment. Now, so far, the tests that I've shown have involved pretty simple data entry. So next I'm going to show you some of the more complex tests that we've built. Now, this is physics QA, and because annual physics QA is a bit more in-depth, we've separated the tests into different test lists, as you can see here. Separating them like this also allows us to be more focused when we're carrying out QA after a service. So, for example, if a collimator was replaced, we can just carry out a light beam alignment test after the service and get the system back into use as quickly as possible. When it comes to our physics annual testing, calculations and image analysis are, of course, very important to us. RadMachine has its own Python 3 calculation environment, so these more complex tests can be pretty easily handled. So, for example, here's a piece of code that I wrote for a KVP accuracy test. You can actually type this code directly into the calculation procedure when you're making the test initially, and then it can reference other tests. So you can see here that this test is referencing the measured KV value. Now I have a video here of this calculation in action as I perform some QA. So as I enter my measured values, the calculation tests automatically output their values, and I can see by how they turn green that they're within tolerance. So now for my favorite part, which is image analysis with RadMachine. So RadMachine does have the ability to perform automated image analysis for some of the more common phantom types in medical physics, but the medical physics team here at the Mater had already developed specialist in-house code to perform quantitative image analysis for general X-ray scanners. And we kind of wanted to move this code over to RadMachine without having to start completely from scratch. So they make this quite easy by allowing you to upload your Python scripts as custom Python packages, which you can then import as normal within the calculation environment and used to analyze your DICOM images. So once the code is all set up, this is how simple it is for us to do image analysis. So I click on File Upload, I choose the zipped file containing my DICOM images, and then the code does the rest. So hopefully this little video works. So it will output the calculation results into the relevant tests, and it will also generate plots for you that can be downloaded or added to your report as you need. Now, of course, transitioning from Excel spreadsheets for QA has meant that our approach to QA has had to change a little bit. So almost everyone is very familiar with Microsoft Excel. It's very approachable and it's very easy to make small changes to spreadsheets. But the fact that there's no version history means that there is no record of these changes having been made. And that can cause issues down the line with functions not really working as you intend anymore. Additionally, making changes and adding more and more tests to Excel spreadsheets year on year can lead to bloated and overly complicated spreadsheets, which not only wastes your time, but also really increases the chances of you making a mistake. So in contrast then, RadMachine requires a bit more planning at the outset. It's kind of best to decide ahead of time which tests you want to do, rather than adding them as you need them the way that you would in Excel. We actually prefer this planned or sort of proactive approach because it means that the tests are set in stone once they're made. And it also sort of discourages the addition of tests unless they're actually required. Also, every test and every unit has a version history attached to it, which means that you can track changes as they happen. And then finally, as I mentioned before, the fact that RadMachine can perform automated trending and charting and supports Python image analysis on the platform has already begun to save us a lot of time, even though we're in very early stages. Now, one final aspect of equipment management that I haven't mentioned so far is the reporting of services and faults with equipment. Now, the ability to manage this easily with RadMachine was very important to us because of the amount of equipment that we have in our hospital. The software that we previously used, RadAsset, as I mentioned before, was custom designed for the workflow in the radiology department, and it was very familiar to our radiographers. So we really needed RadMachine to offer the same degree of functionality. And we found that the existing faults tab on RadMachine was honestly nowhere near detailed enough for what we needed. So to work around this, we decided to use the service report tab for fault and service logging. This workflow is very much still in progress, but I'll just show you what we've developed so far. So once an issue is identified with a piece of equipment, the radiographer or the physicist will flag it. So they'll submit a service event in RadMachine. Within the service event, they can provide a description of the issue. Once an engineer is called, that service event can then be updated to be in progress. Depending on the type of work that was done by the engineer, medical physics may need to perform return to service QA, in which case the event will be marked as physics review. Otherwise, the event can just be marked as completed. Now, a really useful feature of these service events, which I just mentioned, is return to service QA. It's a regulatory requirement in Ireland for medical physics to perform QA on equipment after any major services that could affect clinical function. So with return to service QA on RadMachine, we can assign QA to a service event, and that QA then has to be carried out before the service event can be closed off. So the top image here is a screenshot from one of the actual service events that we've had. You can choose the QA that's required. So in this case, it was an issue with a detector. So an image quality assessment was required. Once you've completed the image quality assessment, you can see visual proof that it's completed within the service report. And you can see the full sequence of events then in the QA view for the entire unit down below. So you can see in this bottom image here, the initial issue was discovered during an annual image quality test, which caused the test to fail. So the radiation protection advisor marked it as requiring a service, and a service event was then generated. And then just above, on the line above it, you can see the return to service QA that was carried out. you can see that the test passed, and you can see that the RPA approved it. This ability to close the loop in a very visual way is really brilliant for us from a regulatory standpoint. So I'm just going to show the full service log for that service event that I just talked about, just so you can get an idea. So at the bottom here, you can see that my colleague Luke created the service event, and he defined the return to service QA that would need to be carried out. And then as we move up, so once the engineer had come in and recalibrated the detector, Luke updated the service event with a description of the work that was done, and he changed the status to physics review to indicate that the return to service QA was still outstanding. The QA was then carried out and was reviewed by one of our medical physics experts, Emer. And at this point, the service event could be marked complete. So that's the full loop. So to conclude, we're still very much in the early stages with RadMachine, but I think it's pretty clear that it's sort of offered us an all-in-one solution to a lot of the problems that we're having with our existing systems. With that said, the transition has definitely not come without its challenges. So I just want to mention a few here. So first of all, the initial time commitment required to set up your equipment and make all the tests that you've seen so far is really significant, and there's no getting away from that. For us, because we knew that our previous equipment management solution was at a sort of end of life stage, we did put ourselves under significant pressure to throw ourselves in and get the system functioning right away. In retrospect, I think if you have the luxury of time, setting aside a number of weeks or months purely for testing the platform would probably be the most optimal approach. Another significant challenge when it comes to any sort of major transition like this is getting buy-in from key stakeholders. So in our case, as I said, the previous systems that we had for equipment management were very familiar to most of the staff on the floor, and moving to a new system and dealing with all the stumbling blocks that inevitably come with that can be frustrating. So of course, a software program is never going to thrive if you don't have buy-in from the people that are going to be using it most. So this is something that does require focus, and we had a lot of meetings in the initial stages. And then finally, I just thought I'd mention the Python aspect. So RadMachine is built in a way that's going to appeal a lot to people who are familiar with programming, and all coding on the platform also uses the Python language. So as a result, it can be a little bit daunting to those who have absolutely no programming experience. So some level of training is required to get everyone up to speed on that. Over here on the right, I have a considerably longer list of the things that we like about RadMachine so far. We've gone through a lot of them already, but I just wanted to mention the last point on the list because it was probably one of the most important for us, the customer support. So the support that was available to us from Sam and the rest of the team at RadMachine from the very beginning really helped to swing our decision when it came to actually purchasing a license. And having responsive support and having someone at the other end when you're emailing with problems during the initial stages of importing equipment and getting everything set up was honestly invaluable. So I think that's pretty much it from me. If anyone has any questions about our experience with RadMachine so far, please feel free to ask them. Thanks very much, everyone, and thanks to IPEM for the opportunity. I'll stop sharing.
Shona, for a great presentation. There are a few questions here, and I'm going to go through them very quickly. There's one that I can answer quickly, which is whether RadMachine can be used without internet access. RadMachine is a cloud-based solution, so fortunately, you will need internet access to be able to access it. And so I think we can move to the next question, and Shona, that's for you. Does RadMachine have a DICOM viewer such as that you can push images? 1 second.
I wouldn't be exactly sure that we never had that in our previous setup, so we would love to use it in the future. I think Sam might have more information for you on that.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
yeah, we just download our images.
Yeah, and I can answer that question. So as Shauna demonstrated, you can always upload those images to RadMachine manually, but we do have some options for automating the import of DICOM images or other files within the software. So I can dive into this a little bit more once I start presenting, but we have a few tools. First, our RadMachine local agent that can be set up to query different directories to pull in images, as well as another tool, RadOrthink, which can function kind of as a DICOM server of sorts. So you can push images to RadOrthink to be automatically uploaded to RadMachine, or RadOrthink can be used to query another system, such as your hospital PACS, or if you have a physics PACS, it could also be set up to query that system. So a few options that we can implement to automate that process.
Thank you, Sam. And the next one from Lawrence King. So you state tests are set in stone when you're using RadMachine. What about investigating testing for fault finding, etc.? Can RadMachine support this? And how long will it take to set up testing for a new installed modality? For example, if conventional mammo systems are upgraded to TOMO or CEDM?
That is a really good question. So the amount of time that it takes, so the more familiar you become with the software, the quicker, the template formation is. Like initially, we were setting up our general X-ray systems because we have the most general X-ray systems. So we have general X-ray completely functioning now, and it's been 4 months, but I think the next iteration of this will take much less time. So investigative testing for fault finding, it doesn't take that long to make a test, but it does, I think RadMachine kind of encourages a more proactive approach, like I was saying. So to know what tests you're going to do ahead of time, but you can add tests on the fly as well if you need to. It's just not the way that we prefer to work.
Thank you. And is your MRI QA on RadMachine? If not, any plan to include it?
Good question. So we're going to have everything on RadMachine eventually. Like I said before, we started with general X-ray because we have the most general X-ray scanners, and we thought it would be the best way to start because we have the most diverse range. But we are looking at adding CT and MRI next, so that's going to be our next goal.
Okay. Yeah, just to say that, obviously with RadMachine, we say that we are equipment agnostic. So obviously, any equipment could be added on there. And the last one for you, Shauna, do radiography staff like it now? Oh, sorry, the question is jumped. Do radiography staff like it now, and is it saving them time?
Oh, the $1 million question. That's a good one. I think we're really getting there in terms of we're having a lot of meetings, as I said. So what we think radiographers need might not be what they actually need. But we have been giving our feedback to Sam mostly about what features would be really helpful for us, primarily in the service event tab, because that's what the radiographers are going to see most often. But they do really like the QA aspect. So QA has been sped up considerably for them with RadMachine.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you so much, Shauna, for an amazing presentation and for answering this question. And thank you to all those who've asked these questions so far. Keep the questions coming. Just for time sake, I'm going to move over to Sam now. We're going to look at RadMachine. So Sam, off to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrice. Go ahead and share my screen here. Right, and thank you again, Shauna, for that fantastic introduction to RadMachine and some of the uses on the diagnostic side of things. I'll be presenting more focused on the therapy side of RadMachine, so some of those features that are built to support different workflows that you might have on the therapy side of medical physics. First, I'll touch on our automated image analysis. So as Shauna showed, you can do quite a bit of image analysis within RadMachine, but we do have a really comprehensive suite of different phantoms built out that can very efficiently analyze all of your images. So we'll touch on that first. We'll also take a look at our profile and PDD analysis workspace. This is another great tool that allows you to upload your data, very easily compare to baselines and track those changes over time. And then last, we will talk about utilizing RadMachine to the fullest. So as you saw, RadMachine is very flexible, and there's certainly a lot that you can do with the software. So I wanted to hit on some of those features that our users are really loving and get the most value from on a day-to-day basis. So we'll go ahead and get started here. And then I guess at the very end too, I should add, we'll be highlighting a new feature that we have coming soon. So a little sneak preview if you stick around to the end. But I wanted to go ahead and pull up the software. So I've got a real RadMachine instance up and running, pulled up on the screen here. So as Shauna did a great job highlighting, on this homepage or dashboard view, you can very easily customize how you have different locations or equipment added and who has visibility to those items. So looking at my screen here, I'm seeing each of my units. And then of course, I can see the high-level overview of the summary of that unit. So in the top row, any QA that's currently due or overdue, as well as any ongoing service events, faults, or QA awaiting review. As you can also see here, in addition to all the diagnostic equipment that we support, RadMachine also supports quite a range of different therapy equipment, different types of linear accelerators, HDR units, proton units. So really sky's the limit for what you could implement and the QA that you could track within RadMachine. In addition to this main machines page, we do also have an ancillary equipment space. And this space, as you can see, is very helpful for tracking of all of the other equipment that you might have in the department, such as your chambers and electrometers, other devices, maybe an IC profiler, or even software like your treatment planning system for ongoing QA. Anything that needs a checklist or reminder really could be tracked here as ancillary equipment, giving you even more flexibility for keeping all of that data in one place. Now, going back to the Machines tab here, like I mentioned, I wanted to start out with some of the image analysis in RadMachine. I think this is where RadMachine really shines, having that integrated image analysis. So it makes it very easy. We have so many of those different phantom types or image analysis types pre-built into the software. But then as Shauna demonstrated, you can also customize or script in your own analysis as well. I'll go ahead and pull up a Winston Lutz analysis. Now, I think this is a great analysis because it's something that many of us are doing very frequently, maybe even a daily basis. And so this is something that you can set up fully automated within RadMachine. So I've got a Winston Lutz analysis pulled up here. Now, this is using our image analysis kind of with a nice user interface here. So I can simply drag and drop my files or click to upload here. Once I load my DICOM images, I'll see a preview of the images, so I can scroll through and check those loaded images if needed. And over here on the right-hand side, I also have a manipulations workspace. So this makes it very easy if you did need to crop or rotate any of those quick manipulations, you can easily apply here. And down below, we do have a manipulation history, so I could easily remove manipulations or even save any of those if I know that every time I might need to crop this particular image, I can apply that to be a persistent parameter. As we already touched on, we do also have the ability to automate the import of these images. So I think that's a huge workflow win that we hear from our customers is we set up our RadMachine local agent. We can also set up that extra component, RadOrthInc, to query if you're using a QA patient with ARIA and you want to pull in those images. Or a lot of our customers might be using a file mode plan or acquiring images and saving them to a file directory. And that local agent can recognize those images, pull them in, and perform the analysis completely automatically. In this case, I'll go ahead and go to the analysis here and analyze. But once again, with that automated process, this would all be done. So it's as simple as logging in to review the results. On the right-hand side here, we do also have a parameters workspace that you can adjust the parameters specific to the images that you're analyzing or to the analysis. And once again, you can save any of these parameters so that they are persistent on this unit. So if I know that I need to adjust for one of my specific units, I can easily do that and save that for all future runs of this particular analysis. As we can see, that analysis is complete, so our result images will pop up here. At the top, I'm seeing all of my individual axis displacements plotted. So I've got my gantry, epid, collimator, and couch displacements, as well as gantry, collimator, and couch wobble at the bottom here. We also have a few other automatically generated plots here. So even this great visualization of our ISO center, so you can very clearly see the BB, the ISO size, and make sense of those results that you have. And then I can view all the individual images as well. So if I have any problem images or angles, I can very easily view those results or view those separately from the rest of the results. Of course, in addition to the images, over on the right-hand side here is where I have that quick results preview. So at a glance, I can see how things are looking. But scrolling down here is where I actually am pulling out all of that data into the test format. So I can very easily see what items are passing, warning, or failing. As we can see here, we do have maybe an item at tolerance today. But of course, you can always make those adjustments. We do present you with some shifts here. So if you wanted to make those shifts or apply those shifts and reanalyze, you could very easily do that. And in addition here, something I love about all of our image analysis templates is that we kind of have these pre-built and ready to go for you, but you're not limited to just these results. We often have even more data stored in this entire results section. So for example, if I wanted to pull out data specific for each image, maybe I want the X and Y for all of my individual fields. All of that data is already saved here and can very easily be reported or pulled out into a test. And then like you saw with Shauna's image analysis, you can always customize. So if you do have a little bit of customization that you want to do, you can always implement that in the software, or we're always happy to work with our customers to see what might need to be added if there are new regulations coming out, or even just new phantom types that need to be added to the software. To give you a quick preview of some of the other image analysis types that we have in the software, I'll pull up our ad hoc workspace. So this is a great workspace in RadMachine, allowing you to quickly test different analysis templates and kind of shows you that full list of what we have ready to go so you can start using the software right away. Of course, common tests like our picket fence, Starshot, Winston Lutz that we just saw, support for many of the CT type phantoms, including the different CAT van models, Sears electron density phantom, and the court for any of those Halcyon units that you might have this with. Planar imaging, we cover quite a bit here. It's a very comprehensive list. So everything from leads in Las Vegas up to the specific vendor standard imaging, Sun Nuclear and Dose Lab phantoms, many of the light to rad phantoms as well. And then last, we have some about the VMAT tests, so the DRMLC and DRGS analyses. And I think one of my favorites is our image field analysis. This is such a simple analysis, but gives you so much information. I'll show you a quick demo of this one is here as well. I'll grab an image here. This is just an image that we've taken on the panel. So I've got an open field here. Go ahead and go to the analysis and analyze. And in this analysis, we'll extract a profile from that image, giving you flatness and symmetry. We're also measuring field size, penumbra, plotting that data automatically. So I can view those profiles here. And once again, this is such a robust analysis. I think a lot of our customers really appreciate because they can get quite a bit of data from one analysis just from that one image here. So once again, we have quite a few image analysis tools. This is really one of my favorite features within RadMachine. Next, I wanted to touch on another great workspace, which is our profile and PDD analysis. So I've got an example, I'll go ahead and pull up, grab this here. And in this workspace, very similarly to our image analysis, we can upload files here, or even use that local agent to upload files. And also on the right-hand side, as you can see, we also have the ability to load reference files. So this is incredibly helpful for any annual data that you might be measuring that you want to compare back to commissioning or any baselines that you may have. So as we can see on this particular unit, I've got my commissioning data pulled up. I'll go ahead and load my current data here. And then once that current data is loaded, we can see that populate here towards the middle of the screen. And I can very simply select the profiles that I would like to overlay. So we have that great visual overlay here. You can very easily compare those profiles. We even support profiles from multiple devices. So if you want to pull in your 3D tank data, maybe you're using an IC profiler, or maybe you have TPS data from Eclipse you'd like to pull in, all of those are supported here in this workspace. Of course, I can hover on any of these data points to view details, and you can zoom into these curves here so you can view data. Once again, very flexible in what you might want to view. And then scrolling down here is where I have all the analysis. So on the left-hand side is where I can set the analysis options. I can toggle the flatness and symmetry protocol to be used, adjust any parameter, and also save those to be persistent. And on the right-hand side here, I have all of the data that was pulled in, as well as my flatness and symmetry results. And I think this is another great tool here. Of course, we're pulling all of that data from the headers. So whatever you've entered in as you've acquired that data for the different scans that you're doing would all be pulled and presented here. But let's say you accidentally labeled something incorrectly or didn't get that information added in. You can very simply adjust that here in RadMachine. So if I need to change the field size or the energy simply because I labeled it incorrectly, you don't have to do anything else other than simply adjust that here within this results section, and that'll save that data appropriately in RadMachine. Now, once we want to compare or see all those results, we'll scroll down here. And I have this built out into an example where I'm pulling out the flatness and symmetry, as well as doing some additional analysis here. So we first calculate flatness and symmetry, but we do save the full data set. So we have the X and Y data, and from there, you can really add in or script in any additional analysis that you might like to see. So here's a great example where we're doing a off-axis analysis, taking a few points, 5 and 10 centimeters off-axis for a comparison. Once again, this is all done via a simple Python script here. I can view that by clicking on my analysis test. And this will show you exactly what we're doing. So as Shauna mentioned, this would be in Python, which really does extend the functionality. So for anyone that knows a little Python, you have quite the playground in RadMachine. But certainly there is so much of RadMachine that you don't need to do Python, but kind of as you get comfortable and start playing around with it, you can really kind of add in quite a bit of functionality. And of course, we can always work with you to help implement anything that you might like to see in the software as well. In this particular example, I have data from all of my photon energies. So this makes really quick work of kind of all of your annuals or even for monthly comparison. You can simply drop in that data, clearly see that everything is passing and looks great, and move on. We'll go ahead and pull up our PDD analysis as well. So we can analyze those depth scans very similarly. Let me grab some data here. And very similarly, I can load my reference data. I'm in our ad hoc workspace right now. So this is a great place where you can, once again, come in here to test out different analyses or just do a quick peek at any of the different data that you might have if you want to quickly check and see how things are looking. Very similarly, you can easily highlight, pull up whatever data you'd like to view. And then we'll see any of our analysis results down below. So I've touched on the image analysis and profile and PDD analysis. And the last thing I wanted to touch on today were some of those other features that might seem small, but have a really big impact for our users. So like I mentioned, our ancillary equipment space is really quite flexible. And I think one of my favorite use cases as well is the equipment calibration tracking. I'll go ahead and go to one of my ion chambers here. This is where we can see that we have an equipment calibration assigned to this specific chamber. I can see the next due date of this particular chamber. And we can also set up email alerts or reports of any calibrations coming due. So I actually had one of those scheduled and sent to me earlier today. I'll go ahead and pull that up here. So this is an example of just one of the notification types that you can set up and automate in RadMachine. As we can see, this email alerts me of calibrations that are coming due. I can see any units that have upcoming calibrations, and I can see exactly when that due date is. This can also be set up for other test types. Maybe you want a heads up for any annuals that are coming due, or even maybe to be notified of any QA that's been missed. So if the weekly QA often gets forgotten and you want to set up an alert to go out if that's missed, that can all be done within RadMachine. And of course, we make it very easy to do that, allowing you to customize when those alerts go out and who they're sent out to. I can see here that I've got a few items with upcoming due dates here. So let's go ahead and walk through what that would look like as far as entering that calibration data in RadMachine. I'll open this equipment calibration here. And this is one of our default templates. So when you are trialing or purchasing RadMachine, we will send out different default templates that we have, things that we've built over time that a lot of our users really like and use. So this is a great way to, first of all, just see kind of that RadMachine workflow, and also have a great starting point for taking these templates. And then from there, you can use them as is, customize them, or still create your own. So it kind of gives you multiple options for how you want to implement different tests within the software. At the top of this particular example, we've got a few simple questions. Has this been sent out for calibration? And has it been returned? If all you're doing today is sending this particular device out, you could mark yes and mark this as an in-progress test. And that is a great way to indicate to your colleagues or to others that this particular chamber is out of the department. So if you go looking for it, you won't find it. And then, of course, once that has returned, you would open up that in progress session. You can say, yes, it's been returned. Upload your calibration certificate. And once again, kind of the goal with RadMachine is giving you that one workspace where you can keep all of your data. So you can keep your PDFs here. You don't have to worry about saving those in some other folder that you can't ever quite remember where that's nestled among all the other folders and files that you have. So that's uploaded to RadMachine and saved so you can very easily access that at any time. We'll also update our calibration factor here. And once I update that factor, directly below, we'll see this quick constancy check. So this is actually pulling in the results from the last calibration for that constancy check. So this is a great way to ensure that, of course, you're within that recommended 5% and that you've not typed in anything incorrect. So you know you're all set and good to go. I think what I like most about this is once you enter this calibration factor, this is the only time you have to enter it. So instead of having to pull up every spreadsheet where you might use this chamber and update the factor, you enter it in one place in RadMachine, and this will carry anywhere this chamber is used or selected in your QA. So we'll go ahead and submit this result here. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like of when you would select this chamber and pull in that calibration factor. So pulling up one of my units here, I'll grab kind of a monthly dosimetry checks workflow. And at the very top of this test list here, I've got a section where I can select the equipment that I'll be using. I should also mention that I have separate chamber and electrometer calibrations, but if you do calibrate as a paired unit, that can also be supported in RadMachine. So we've done that with our customers or worked through that. So you can easily toggle, once again, paired units or keep those separate based on your workflow. I'll go ahead and select the chamber that I'll be using. And once I select my equipment, we'll see a few things happening. To the right, we'll see the equipment calibration populate. So I can see the date time of that most recent calibration. And this is even hyperlinked. So if I wanted to view all of the details from that session, I can very simply click on my hyperlink here. That will pull up the results. So I could once again view that PDF, view my factor and the details of who submitted this session. We'll go ahead and go back to our monthly workflow here. And just below that equipment calibration test, we also have another check to make sure that that calibration is current. So I like to call this the easy button, more or less. Of course, I can look at the date here and look at today's date, but this is just an extra layer of safety. This will check both of those dates and either give you a calibration okay or calibration expired message. So it would be very clear if you did pull up equipment that was expired. Moving down a few lines here, we also have a lookup type test that can easily pull in data from other tests that were performed. So a great use case for this is exactly what we see here. I'm actually pulling in my annual data. So I'm pulling in those factors I measured annually to be used in my monthly calculation. And we see those populated down below here. I'll fill out the rest of these details so we can take a few measurements. Of course, if you ever have question of how something's being calculated in RadMachine, you can always simply click on that test name to expand, and that will show you the calculation procedure. So of course, this is very nice in that you don't have to go to a different page or go to documentation. You can very clearly see here exactly what's being done, double check if needed to, and move on with the rest of your QA. Dropping down into this next section, I've got an output constancy check for one of my energies. I've got a secondary MU check built in, can enter in my MU reading. Go ahead and enter in some readings here from my chamber. And down below, we're seeing my output looks a little bit high today. Maybe I want to take a few more readings. I can easily do that, adding on those readings on the fly. And then based on what I'm seeing here, maybe I do want to go ahead and adjust that output today. I think in the past, in the clinic, this is one of those things where you'd always want to do a quick double check. So you might find yourself pulling up the last month's spreadsheet. Maybe you weren't around, someone else did the QA last month. So you'd pull up the spreadsheet or maybe check a few other sources just to make sure that this is correct in what you're seeing. But what I love about RadMachine is over on the right-hand side of this page, I have a very quick history view, so I can see that trend right away. I can see that over the past 5 months, we've slowly been inching up. So, hey, maybe it really is time to go ahead and adjust today. It's not just a bad setup or something else going on. So this is, of course, a very powerful tool. Anytime that you are performing or reviewing QA, you can always quickly see that trend. And then like Shauna also demonstrated, you can click on the link to the far right here. That will launch our charting workspace where you could view a full history of that data. At the bottom of our plot here, we can see some wrench icons, which also indicate service that was performed. So this, of course, gives you quite a bit of insight to your data. If you did notice some big change in the data, you could more easily correlate that back to specific service or tuning that was done on the equipment. So certainly a powerful workspace, allowing you to chart and trend data across different units or even different types of tests. So I know we're getting close to the end of our time here today. So there is just one more thing that I wanted to show. Of course, we always like to take our users' feedback to come up with our new features. And something that we've heard for a while is having some flexibility in how users enter and view data in RadMachine. Of course, as you've seen, we have a list format. but there's just some data that might be easier to view in a tabular format. Or at the end of the day, a lot of us are just very comfortable with spreadsheets, and we might have a spreadsheet that works really well, but we also want to take advantage of some of the great functionality and features of RadMachine. So we're very excited to give a sneak preview today of a new feature, the RadMachine Workbook. RadMachine Workbook gives you the flexibility and functionality of a spreadsheet within the RadMachine environment. So you still have version control and tracking. You have the ability to trend that data over time and set up those due dates, make changes easily across multiple units, all within the comfort of a spreadsheet. So I've got a few quick examples to show you here. This is an example of a mechanicals workflow. Of course, you can really customize this. So anything as far as the layout and design of how you might have it on a spreadsheet could be set up here in this environment. And this actually functions just like a spreadsheet would. So I can enter in my results here. You'll see passing and failing very clearly. And then, of course, in addition to the results here from the spreadsheet view, I can also pull out any of this data into our test format so I can track and trend that data over time. So this is really what we like to think of as kind of the best of both worlds. You get the kind of comfort level that you have with the spreadsheet. You can actually take your spreadsheets and upload them here. So you can very easily implement RadMachine. If there is, a workflow that happens to work well with your department that you just want to kind of transfer over to RadMachine, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just take that spreadsheet, add it into RadMachine. So then once again, you can use it as is, but still get all those extra benefits of having a software like RadMachine. This is once again kind of a simple mechanicals workflow, but just to show you a preview of what a more complex workflow would look like, I've got another tab in this spreadsheet, a photon output check. We can even make this full screen, really to give you that view if you've got quite a large table of data that you're working with. And you can very easily identify which cells should be editable. We see those noted here with black flags in the corner. And then you can also determine which cells you'd like to link to tests for tracking and trending of that data over time. Once again, this is a brand new feature, not quite out yet, but we really wanted to show it off today. We're very excited and hoping that once again, this just brings all of that flexibility of a spreadsheet into the RadMachine environment so you get the best of both worlds. All right, well, I know we probably have a few more questions, so I want to leave time for that here. Patrice, I'll let you go ahead and take over.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for another amazing, talk, and hopefully our listener found it useful. There are a few questions here. There are questions related to pricing. I'm going to take those questions, and Samantha, I'm going to let you answer the other questions.
Yeah.
So there is a question from Cameron. Can you name any QA imaging analysis which the software does by itself give you result?
Yeah, I might need a little bit more clarity on this, but we do have that pre-built kind of workflow with different analysis types. So from the different phantom types that we support to other analysis routines like picket fence, and all of those are preloaded and ready to go in the software. So it's very easy to pull up that ad hoc workspace that we looked at or assign those to a unit. So it will automatically pull out those results. But then if there is something that you don't see on that list or that we don't yet have support for, we're more than happy to work with you. If you have a few test images, we can generally see what we could get working. So we're often working with our customers. I think a great example of that is some of the recent regulations in France. We've added quite a few more analyses just to support those regulations.
Thank you. And we're going to take some questions from John McLean. It's got 3 questions. And as I said, I'm going to take on the commercial ones, but the technical one. So you got, does RadMachine have a mail server such as someone or multiple people can be email notified of a report or a failure as it stands, I need to log into RadMachine to know there's a problem?
It's a great question. Yeah, so we have both a mix of notifications and reports that can cover this. So if you want a notification emailed out based on the failure of QA or even completion of QA, that can be set up in RadMachine. So the user would not need to log into RadMachine, but could just simply be emailed anytime something occurs. We also have the ability for reporting. So you could do, say, a monthly or weekly report of any QA failures. So this would be another great way that you can automate that process, sending out those emails. This especially works well if you have some users, maybe administrators that don't necessarily need to log directly into the software, but just want to be alerted of any issues. You can add in their email addresses as well, and that doesn't require that they even have an account. We would simply just need their email address.
Thank you, Sam. And the second question for John is, does RadMachine have customers doing imaging QA on patient images? Does RadMachine facilitate anonymization via RadAuthn? Will the RadMachine cloud be UK based? I can answer the latter part, but Sam, you take it on.
Yeah, great questions. So RadMachine is for machine QA data only. So we do not support any patient data in the system. Of course, being cloud-based, we just want to be very careful. So once again, it would only be machine QA data, no patient data or patient information. But as far as where would the cloud server be located for a site in the UK, we do have a server in Frankfurt, so we do route you regionally. So that would be in Europe. You wouldn't be routed to the US or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. And a question from Taylor. He likes the spreadsheet function, which is great. So can you write into the blank cell? If so, where does it go? Where does it go to? And can you upload a spreadsheet, edit it offline, and it'll undo import the data into RadMachine?
Yeah, great questions. Glad to hear that you like the spreadsheet function. We're really excited about it. As far as writing into blank cells, you would just need to indicate which cells you would like to be editable. So that's a great way of kind of locking down which cells you'd want users to interact with. So any cell that you make editable, you could write into. That being said, you don't necessarily have to save any of that data or report that cell into a test. So it could be as simple as maybe a comment or something informational that you'd like to see on a report, but you don't necessarily need a value or anything saved to an explicit test within RadMachine. So we do have the flexibility to support a workflow where, once again, it's just more information or comments that could be added in. Then as far as uploading a spreadsheet edited offline, yeah, so that's a workflow that we've had set up for a while, actually. You can import spreadsheets, either CSVs or plain text files, and parse that to pull out information. So this can be a great way. Maybe you just have a spreadsheet that, yeah, you like to use offline if you're at a site that doesn't necessarily have internet that you have access to. You could enter that data in a spreadsheet and then upload that spreadsheet to RadMachine and parse to pull out the relevant data.
Well, thank you. And the last technical question is from Rebecca. Are there currently any vendors or software RadMachine doesn't work with or pull data from easily? Can you mention, you mentioned ARIA, IC profile, etc. work well?
Yeah, at this point, we really do have support for, I think, most of the main manufacturer hardware systems. So certainly if you have a specific one you'd like to check compatibility with, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to test on our side. And if we don't already have support, we can likely work with you to add support. But we do support different devices. So many of the Sun Nuclear devices, IC Profiler, we can pull in DQA3 data. We can pull in MPC data from Varian Linux. We support IBA devices, PTW devices. So once again, quite a broad range of support, but we're more than happy to check compatibility if you want to reach out to us.
Okay, thank you, Sam. And thank you for those great questions. Regarding the commercial side of things, pricing model, we offer annual subscription. That's our main model. and this is based on number Linux. And so our pricing is all inclusive. And so instead of having obviously paying for per license and then having support separately, everything is inclusive. So with your annual subscription, you've got unlimited support, you got unlimited training, and so obviously within reason, and so we can offer as much training as you need. Your upgrades are included, updates are included. So really, it's an all-inclusive, pricing model, and as I said, it's based on normal Linux. So if you got 2 Linux, 4 Linux, that's what you're going to pay for. And in terms of costs, obviously, we can discuss costs, on a webinar. So what I would suggest is that if you can reach out to us, I can leave my email here in the chat. And then reach out to us, and then depending on obviously the number of your Linux, we can give you a quote and to give you an idea about that. So I don't know if there's any other questions relating to pricing, but mainly this is how our pricing model works. I think we answered all the questions. Well, once again, thank you very much, everybody, for your questions, and really appreciate your contributions. For more information resources, obviously, if you go on your website, we've got a great blog space. You also can also find us on social media. I'm going to hand over now to Catherine.
Thanks, Patrice. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sammy. Thanks, Shauna. Hopefully everybody found that insightful and interesting. There's some really good questions coming in, which is good. We will have any contact details if people would like to also get in touch to Patrice or Sammy, then please also contact IPEN Conferences if that's easier, and we will connect you together. Just one quick last thing on the screen, you can see some forthcoming events. We have some more webinars coming up from our CSC event, and some in-person for radiotherapy, the effects of skin pigmentation, and also Southwest Regional. But all the details are on our website. Thank you once again for everybody for joining the webinar. We hope you found it insightful, and thank you Team Radformation and Shauna for sparing your time to do that as well. Much appreciated. And nothing else to say other than have a lovely Friday afternoon, and it's the weekend, so thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.